Hello, and welcome back to my video series about some of the biggest spiritual lessons that I have learned and just gone through over the last few years. So, if you're new here, my name is Shannon. I am a shamanic practitioner. I specialize in soul healing, in womb shamanic work, and in star shamanic work. So, connecting with the cosmos above us and learning from all the information that's out there in the world or in the universe and bringing it to Earth to be able to work with it and help humanity, help the Earth, help our evolution. So, I have been doing this work I started my business 4 years ago at this point, but I've been doing this kind of spiritual work for much longer than that. And what I have noticed, and if you have been in any kind of spiritual practice for, a little while, you've probably noticed this too, that the world is always going to give us little uh winks or nods or like little nuggets of experience that is going to support us and guide us forward on our journey. So I want to share one of the really interesting like sagas really of universal winks and nudges that I've received over the last almost exactly a year. So I have been receiving them the last year. So started in 2023 and we're now in 2024. The universe has been communicating to me through my car. And so when this first started happening, I definitely Googled and I was like, are other people having this? Like, have other people experienced or written about or shared testimonies, as it were, around like the universe or spirit communicating through their car? Because, wow, like this seems very much like spirit doing something and communicating to me. And I'm listening to what spirit is saying to me, but I'm also curious, like, do other people experience this? And I found a few stories from other people, but not a lot, honestly. And so that's part of why I want to share this, because when spirit communicates through your car, it can be pretty triggering. At least I found it to be very triggering in certain ways because our car is our transportation, and I live in the US, and I know a lot of my like viewers and clients do as well, although not all by any means. But if you are like me and you live someplace where you need a car, like I cannot get anywhere without a car where I live, and I live in a city. But if you're American, or if you've been in the US, lived in the US, you know that like our cities are by and large not set up to have any kind of really consistent or reliable public transportation. You really can't get places without a car. So it's really interesting because I was really resistant to a car for a really long time. Like I grew up part of my childhood outside of the US. And so all of my friends for a lot of my childhood, they had always grown up with the idea that you don't get your license before you're 18. And I was so young when we left the US that just seemed normal to me. So when we moved back to the US when I was a teenager, I was like, I don't care about having a car. I don't care about getting my license. Like 16 is stupid and too young. Like it was so silly. It was like such a teenage thing to think and feel, but it was also very much like came from a huge resistance to living in the US. I did not want to come back at all. I preferred living abroad. Which is why I moved back abroad as an adult as well for several years. But I was like, I don't want a car. And then I realized like we lived in rural New Hampshire, which is really just New Hampshire because all of New Hampshire is quite rural. They're like the cities in New Hampshire, there's like two of them and they're 100,000 people, right? Like they're not big. Right. And so I did change my mind. I got my license at 16. But I had this resistance to cars from a pretty early age. And then when I graduated college, I moved to France and I lived there for a couple years. And I didn't have a car in France. I took public transport everywhere. I even lived in really rural France for a year. And that would have actually been really nice to have a car there, but I didn't have to. Like I was able to get to train stations. I was able to get on buses. Like there was public transport in a way that just like absolutely does not exist in the US. And so when I moved to France, I intended to stay. And so I was like, get rid of the car that I had, everything. And then I came back to the US at the end of 2020 because of COVID. And it was just like, with all the lockdowns and the requirements, I was not going to be able to do what I wanted to do in France. And on a visa as, a non-citizen, it was just as a student, because I was doing school work there. It was not tenable to stay. So I came back to the US, and that was when I realized, oh my goodness, I have to have a car. So I came back. I went to Phoenix when I came back to the US because my parents had just retired down there, and I was really like, I mean, I had never intended on coming back and living in the US. If you'd asked me 4 years ago if I was ever going to live in the US again, I would have told you unequivocally no. Absolutely not. Never, ever, ever. Like, I'm not a fan of the infrastructure or the lifestyle of the US. So I was like, no, I'm going to stay in Europe. COVID changed a lot of things for me. So I came back and I went to Phoenix. And Phoenix, if you have spent time there, maybe in the city itself, like it's the center of the city, you can get around on public transport. But my parents did not move to the center of the city. They moved Phoenix sprawls. That valley is big, and my parents moved to more of a place where they could have land, but like still be close to the city. And so there was no public transport, and I was like, wow, I have to get a car. So that led me to purchasing a car a few months after I moved back to the US. And that car was my first car purchase, like by myself. And it was a big deal. It was like, okay, I am committing to having my own my own personal transportation. I am committing to have a car to help me move forward. Right. And so it was a big deal. It was a big deal for me to make that decision to buy a car. And another thing that's really interesting, and I know I'm giving a lot of backstory, but I think it's really interesting to give the backstory, because I think this backstory explains why Spirit has brought lessons for me via my car. Because not everyone has the same whole kind of resistance to a car and to the lifestyle that comes with a car as I have had for a lot of my life. So I know I'm speaking truth and sharing something important when I start to hiccup or burp. So there's that. So, oh my goodness. Right. I wanted to say my natal chart, my astrology natal chart, Pluto is in my third house. So Pluto is the planet of transformation, and the third house rules our short-term travel and communication and other things, but short-term travel is what's important here. So it rules our cars, if we have cars. So my Pluto is in my third house. So the planet of transformation rules the house that rules my car, which means that my car, my connection to having a car, to transport, to moving around, short-term travel, not like getting on airplanes, but being able to just transport myself normally, that is super tied to my transformations. And it's in Scorpio. My third house is in Scorpio. So Pluto is in Scorpio for me. So extra transformation, right? Because Pluto's at home in Scorpio, and Scorpio is the sign of transformation and death and rebirth. Very, very interesting. And then shamanic work is training to be able to work with death and birth, death and rebirth energies, being able to travel in and out of the unseen worlds, and help people help yourself and then help others move through these big death and rebirth experiences, big transformation experiences. So literally my shamanic work, my transportation, my car, all of this, I can see it all in my third house, and how Pluto rules that house, Scorpio rules that house, and how I have these big transformations come through my relationship to how I get to move. So this brings me to 2023. This is how Spirit has really been communicating to me via my car, really specifically in the last 12 months. So March 1st, 2023, I am driving home, ironically, from a therapy appointment, because I do spiritual shamanic work, but I also really highly believe and encourage my clients to also see a therapist when they need it. And I do the same for myself. So I'm coming home from a therapy appointment, and I am going through an intersection and a car runs the red light at the intersection, T-bones me, pushes me across the road, all this stuff. And I end up able to get my car over to the curb and stop, like I block the flow of traffic for a while because there's no way to pull off. There's no shoulder. I'm not on like a big highway, but I am on a busy kind of thoroughfare road in the city I live in. So my car, my passenger side door is completely bent in, bumper has completely been like torn off of the vehicle. I call, the police, call my insurance, get a tow. Police never show up, which is really interesting. The police never showed up. And we waited for a couple of hours and kept calling the police, and they kept saying, we'll get there, we'll get there. And eventually the person who hit me got a tow and left. And at that point I was like, okay, well, I might as well leave. But it was really interesting because Colorado has a law that if you leave the scene of an accident, you can't pursue like any kind of, it's not that you can't pursue legally, but you can't pursue like criminally, which was really interesting because that you can only pursue criminally, if I remember correctly. I'm definitely like, don't quote me on any of this. If the damage to your car and your like is over a certain amount, which mine was, my car ended up being totaled. Like it was a huge amount of damage to my car. And so it was really interesting because that happened and I just really didn't have control over it at all. So moved the car, ended up, take it to a shop, and it was just so interesting because I had to cancel the rest of my day. I had to like reschedule my clients because I couldn't get home. I had to, I'm on the phone with insurance. If you've ever had a car wreck, you get it. And this is not my first car wreck. I had totaled a car a few years beforehand. I was driving across a bridge and hit black ice and totaled a car. But I didn't take care of it that time because I was still in college and I was on my parents' insurance. And so my dad took care of everything, which was so lucky for me, right? But I had never gone through this whole process of doing it by myself. So anyway, my car gets totaled. But if obviously, of course, it takes them a few weeks to get to the point of deciding that, yeah, we're going to total. But that March 1st accident, it was really interesting. The next day, my brother and his girlfriend fly in to ski. I was going to ski with them and now I can't ski with them because I got all banged up and have like a minor concussion and I can't go, I'm not a good skier anyway. So me going and getting on a ski slope and like probably falling and hurting myself when I have like, I'm already having like minor concussion and I really hurt my wrist and all this stuff, not a good idea. And it was really interesting because it started off this chain of events, March 1st, 2023, when my car was hit, where I went into a really, really deep death process. I had been working on moving through and healing some really deep trauma at the time. And that accident really shook me up and made me realize like I kind of had almost like an internal break. You could call it a mental breakdown in a sense. Like I was able to still do my life, but also spiritually, I would call it like a deep, like inner death, because I think that really describes well what I went through. So I went into this really deep death space, mentally, emotionally, internally. And I started doing EMDR therapy, which is a type of brain reprocessing. Shortly after, like it was that accident that pushed me into doing that therapy, which really helped me figure out and anchor back into my personal practices, my shamanic practices, my work, all this stuff. But I'll get to that in a second. So this accident happened. I buy my car. I get finally like insurance decides all their stuff, total the car, pay me the money and all the stuff at the like March 22nd, March 23rd. And I buy my car on my new car on March 23rd of 2023. So I start this death process. And then I am given a vehicle for moving forward, to help me move forward through the death process. This is how I would look at it very symbolically, right? Um, so April, May, and then first part of June, I'm doing really intense EMDR. I'm doing really intense trauma therapy. I'm having a lot of stuff come up. I'm moving through a lot of big energy, and it's really intense, deep in the death process. But I am able to move forward, right? I have this beautiful new car. June 21st, the summer solstice. My car is parked on a street outside of a friend's house. We went out into the mountains, and I'd like left my car at her house. On our way home, we're like almost back to her place. It starts hailing. I mean, the worst hailstorm I've ever seen. We like have to pull off the side of the road and just like cower in the car because we cannot drive in it. The car that we were in, her car gets totaled. My car has in it so much hail damage that it should have been totaled. If it had not just been a brand new buy, it would have been totaled. So my car still drivable, but in terms of like hail damage, horrific, right? Really, really bad hail damage. And so that happens. So I'm still able to move forward, but there is now a little bit of like, hey, your transportation is not perfect, right? You're not going to move forward as fast as you can, right? And it takes me until January of 2024 to get my car in for hail repair. So end of June to beginning of January, I'm in this place where I am still moving forward, but there's like bumps in the road. There's like potholes in the road, like just like my car has all this hail damage, my path forward has ups and downs and stops and starts, and it's very inconsistent and kind of frustrating. And then in December, right before I take my car in, I am driving down a road following the flow of traffic. I'm definitely speeding, but I am following the flow of traffic, and I am the person who's pulled over, and I get a ticket. And so that was my first thing that happened to me that was in my control. And so this was right before Christmas. It was maybe like December 18th, December 19th. And that was my first, like, okay, I have control here. I am being shown that I have control coming back in. I went and paid the ticket the same day. I was like, really upset for like an hour or two. And then I was like, okay, you know what? I can't change what happened. I cannot contest this. Like, I was speeding. It's just unfortunate that I'm the person who was singled out to get the ticket, but I was speeding. So fine. I'm not going to try and contest this or do anything about it. I'm just going to pay it and take back control of, now I do have control about how I'm moving. So this happens. And then I take my car in for its hail repair, January 12th. I get rental insurance for a month, and then it runs out. And my car had so much hail damage that it took 7 weeks to be repaired. So I'm without a car for 3 weeks because my rental insurance runs out. I work from home, and it was just not worth it to me to pay out of pocket for a rental. I was just like, that's such a waste of money, honestly. I don't even drive every day. I probably two out of the 5 work days of the week I don't leave normally unless I have to. So I was like, it's not worth it. So my boyfriend ended up really helping me out a lot so that I could use his car sometimes when on days I needed it, if I need to go see clients or get to the gym or whatever. So it's really interesting because my car is getting fixed, and then I have this big, most of February I can't leave my house. During the day, during the weekday, unless we've done something special where, I dropped my boyfriend off at work and I use his car for the day. So my transportation, again, completely stifled. But it also was really big in the sense that learning or really leaning into, I can't go anywhere, put me in a place of being really needing to surrender into, I can't control anything right now. And I also have to surrender into letting my partner help me and accepting that help and support, because I can't control anything right now. I can't do anything. And it was actually really, really good for our relationship. So that was a really beautiful side effect. So but it was interesting because February was a really, really interesting month for me. It was a very slow month in terms of just like shifts, like things changing. It felt like a very slow, stagnant month, but not in a, it wasn't bad. Like those words sound bad, but it wasn't bad. It was just like such a surrender. Like nothing is going to change fast in this month. Like again, third house, Pluto transformation, moving forward. There wasn't momentum to move forward. My transportation had literally been stopped. There wasn't anything for me to do, and so I did a lot of really big integrating in February. I had some really beautiful breakthroughs for myself, and integrating of just all of this whole journey I've been on for the past year. And then February 29th, I get my car back late in the day. And I'm like, yes, car back, amazing. I can move forward. And we get some forward momentum coming. And then a week after, so like March 6th, I believe it was, maybe March 7th, I'm driving and a rock hits my windshield and my windshield cracks right in my side of view, like right in my driver's side window. It's like right, it goes right across my eye line and it just grows. And so if you've had your windshield cracked before, depending on where it cracks, you can often leave it for like I've had a windshield crack before that I didn't fix for probably 5 or 6 months because of where it cracked. It really didn't impact how I could see out in any way, shape, or form. And every state or most states, I think, have their own laws about it. But it was like completely fine in Colorado to leave that crack. This crack I got was right again in my line of vision. I could not leave it. It still took me God, 2.5 weeks, almost 3 weeks to get it fixed because of just timing and glass shortages and all the things. But I got it fixed yesterday on the day I'm filming this, so March 26th. So yeah, just under 3 weeks after it happened, I got it fixed. And it was really interesting because, hopefully Pluto and the third house are done working on my car for a while. I think they are, but the reason I share this is because it was so interesting. I get my car back, I'm moving forward, and then I get this crack, and I took that immediately as a metaphor. I was like, okay, where am I? What is the crack in my vision? What am I not seeing clearly? What is right in front of my eyes that I'm not letting myself see? And if I can see past it, there's my clarity. And so that has been the metaphor I've worked with the entire month of March. What has been the crack in front of my eyes? Like, what is the crack in my vision? What am I not seeing clearly? What if I can just if I can see it clearly, will help me anchor in a shift, anchor in change. And it's been really interesting because by moving through with that metaphor, I have found lots of different little, like a lot of them little things, but things that were a crack in my vision. For example, I went back through, I closed a shamanic apprenticeship 2 days ago. It was a year-long apprenticeship, and we had such a beautiful journey together. I'm so proud of the women who journeyed into this apprenticeship with me. Like they are just incredible practitioners. They're going to do beautiful things. And it was a really potent year for them. And it was a really potent year for me as the teacher, as the guide. Like I knew that teaching apprenticeships was going to always bring confronting things up for me too, because in order to just like be in integrity and teach shamanic work, you have to be willing to have a lot of hard stuff reflected to you and continue growing. Like you don't get to just stop and teach. Then you're not walking a shamanic path. So I always knew that when I taught, it was going to bring up stuff for me. And I taught a couple of people individually before, but this was my first like group apprenticeship. And it was so interesting how my journey with my car really mirrored the apprenticeship, actually, because we started our apprenticeship on March 14th of last year. So I had just like had my car wreck March 1st. We started apprenticeship March 14th. We closed apprenticeship March 25th of 2024. I finally get my last car thing, hopefully, knock on wood. finished or fixed March 26th. Sorry, March 26th. So it was a really, really like very close parallel between my journey personally and the journey that I led in that shamanic apprenticeship. So I have another apprenticeship starting April 22nd. So just under a month from now. And that one's open for enrollment right now. We're going to see who comes into it. But I'm curious to see how spirit guides me through my own transformation with that group. Hopefully it won't be third house related this time. It won't be Pluto in my third house related. Hopefully it'll be a different part of my birth chart that I get to go through the transformation, or at least hopefully it won't impact my car. But this whole series of events was definitely to me a very deep metaphor for the transformation that I went through teaching apprenticeship, and the transformation I brought into the apprenticeship, right? Because anything I'm going through as the guide or the teacher, it's going to impact how I am holding space and how I'm teaching transformation and death and rebirth work to my current students. So me being in this space of this particular type of death and rebirth transformation myself meant that was really like, I really got to teach in this apprenticeship, this really deep, like this very deep specific type of death and rebirth, like moving through the physical, mental, spiritual, emotional types of death and rebirth that affect us being able to move forward, which was like completely on point for what this apprenticeship needed, right? And it's really interesting how the shamanic path brings you into your authenticity of what you need to be teaching, like the specific codes that are necessary for that apprenticeship while you're teaching it. At least this is what I'm finding as a teacher, as I'm going deeper in my teaching journey, how the shamanic path brings me into exactly the place I need to be in order to teach the codes, teach the wisdom, teach the practices, teach the transmissions of shamanic work in the specific way that my apprentices need to receive it at that time, which is just beautiful, right? Spirit works in beautiful, beautiful ways. So this has been one of my big like universal winks for a year, where they've been just like, Spirit's been working with that car, Spirit's been working with that transportation and saying, stop, go. And now, right here today, windshield is clear, car is fixed. I basically have a brand new car at this point. Like the way my hail damage was, pretty much every external part of my car got replaced, and now my windshield has been replaced. So I literally have a brand new car, compared to the car I bought a year ago. So I had a brand new car because I bought this car brand new. Drove it off the lot with like 14 miles on it, right? So it was brand new from the get-go, but then went through such a big transformation with me that now it is basically brand new again, just with miles on it. And so really interesting how my car and I have gone on this journey together. And this is an example of a place where I'd say, Spirit does work with us through our physical environment. So I could have looked at everything happening with my car as like, what the fuck? Why is this happening? Why is the world out to get me? Like, can I not just drive in peace? Right. And I'm not going to lie to you and say that I didn't feel that at all. Like, I definitely had a couple, like when I got the hail damage, I definitely had like a day right after it happened before I looked at it. I mean, I knew it was significant because it happened on the summer solstice. But before I tapped into the significance of it deeply, I definitely had like 24 hours of just being frustrated and angry. And like, really, like, this is a brand new car. Like, how did this happen? Like, Spirit, like, universe, God, why? And then I was like, no, this is not helpful. That's not how I want to look at this. What's going on? What can I learn from it? So yeah, you get to choose how you look at what's happening in your life. Because to me, when I lay out my car journey of the last year, it's so obvious that Spirit was working with me through my car. But it also is so obvious that I could have looked at this as like, the world is out to get me. And so hopefully what you can take from this is that if you pay attention to the things happening in your life, you can usually find a message or a meaning behind it that can help you move forward in your life, in your journey, in your spiritual growth. And it can help make a meaning out of the chaos. It can help make meaning out of the chaos. So let me go back. I didn't finish one last thought, which is that with the windshield crack in March, I took that, like I said a few minutes ago, as okay, it is time for me to figure out like what are the last things clouding my vision. And I went back through my old notes from the last few years. Like I have so many journals at this point from the last few years, and I went back through them and I was like, oh, I've had these themes of things I've been working on, like relationship themes, business themes, money themes, like, you know, the big things that most of us are working on, our relationships, our finances, how we're supported in the world. Like I was like, I have these themes and I can see these, like where these themes specifically have been working with me, right? And the parts like where I've grown with them, and also like patterns that maybe I've been stuck in and didn't even realize it until I went back through my notes and I was like, wow, you know, this little pattern I wrote about 2 years ago, and I'm writing about some aspect of that same pattern right now in my journals. So I spent the time in March really looking at those patterns and going, where is this serving me to hold on to this pattern? Because at a certain point, holding on to a pattern is a choice. Like I'm aware of it and I'm still holding on to it. So where is it serving me? And I spent a lot of introspective time looking at where is this serving me and why am I holding on to it? Like, why am I making the choice to hold on to this? Because this is not helpful. Like, it's not actually what I want. And yet I'm making the choice over and over to hold on to this. And so I did a lot of clearing of my inner and outer vision and my beliefs, and then got the windshield replaced. And now my way forward is clear. My vision is, well, it does feel a lot clearer. So hopefully that clarity continues to move forward, continues to move, continues to become even clearer and clearer and clearer. So taking what happens physically in our physical world as messages from spirit about how can I use this as a metaphor for something I'm moving through, and maybe use this to help me move through these things better, faster, easier, with more support. It really is going to change how you show up in your life if you can adopt this kind of way of looking at what's happening in your physical reality. So what I've taken from all of this is having less resistance to transportation, less resistance moving forward, right? My resistance to a car has mirrored itself in resistance to moving forward in different ways throughout my life and throughout this last year. And it's also my relationship to transportation moving forward to a car has also mirrored places in the last year where I needed to slow down and not move forward as fast, you know, and that was really good and needed. But I can definitely look at my, you know, lifelong relationship to cars, to transportation, and like my own personal transportation as something like, okay, there is growth here. There's work here I can do to make myself more open to moving forward and letting it be easy, as opposed to having resistance and dislike, for example, of having to have a car. Because there is definitely a part of me that still doesn't like having to have a car. And so it's like, how can I embrace that is part of my path right now and something I need, and let that be okay and stop resisting it, so that that resistance doesn't get mirrored in other places in my life, in all the other places I want to move forward and make strides, make changes. So yeah, I think that's everything here right now that I want to share on this topic. I hope this has been helpful. If you've ever had car stuff come up, I would love to hear what it's been like for you, like what your experience was with spirit communicating to you through your car. Please share in the comments. I'd love to know. And I hope, yeah, this helps you just look at things happening in your life and maybe bring a little bit of a spiritual perspective into what's going on, and help you make sense of it and see how you can use what's happening as a lesson and as something to help you move forward. All right. Well, thank you for joining me on this video. I will see you in the next ones. Have a beautiful, blessed day.